Hello, I'm psychologist Dr. Jeff Gardere, and welcome to Culture Shock. Our guest today is psychologist Dr. William R. Coulson. He is the man responsible for putting psychology into the public school classrooms nationwide.
And I'm psychotherapist Dwight Bain. When you think of the words Jonesboro, Pearl, Paducah, Littleton, what have we wrought in our culture that has us stunned and reeling at the violence that we're seeing in school shootings across the country? Was it the guns? Was it Hollywood? Or was it TMP? Too much psychology.
Well, Dr. Coulson, I want to thank you for joining us here today. Mental health care in the schools is as important as the textbooks. Tipper Gore said that, Bill. What's wrong with that statement and that sentiment?
Well, it just, I mean, what's her qualification for saying it? That's one thing, but let me tell you how this whole problem...
That's hitting below the belt there.
Abe Maslow, back in 1943, wrote this in an
psychologist,
article. The famous psychologist, yes. Abe Maslow. Clearly, he wrote, if psychotherapy could be tremendously extended, if instead of dealing with a few dozen patients a year, psychotherapists could deal with several million, this would force all kinds of political, legal, economic, and sociological changes as well. And that's what's happened, and it's not been good. We're becoming a nation of illiterates.
But was he going for positive change? Is that what he was talking about?
He wanted to put everybody in touch with the source of authority within their own feelings, and that turns out to be a mistake. When you do that to adults, maybe it's not so bad, but when you turn on children and start picking on them in this way, it doesn't work out well for the culture.
That's interesting that you say picking on them as if it's something that we're trying to ram down their throats.
Well, think about it, Jeff. It is something that's being rammed down their throats. If I'm 7 years old and I'm sitting in the second grade and I'm minding my own business and someone comes along and says, how do you feel about what your mom and dad say? And if I'm always encouraged to express and deal with my feelings with no sense of absolute, no sense of right or wrong, and perhaps even the suggestion, sometimes even more than the suggestion, that my parents are full of mud.
Get your kids out of the line of fire, because all of this psychology, this TMP, this too much psychology is very dangerous.
Police do their job, they arrest the bad guys, they bring the bad guys to the courthouse, and the liberal judges look at them, tap them on the back of the hand, and let the bad guys back on the street. We have crime in America increasing higher than it ever has been, and I'm telling you, liberal judges are a huge part of that problem.
And as always, you're looking for the scapegoat, so now it's the liberal judges. Well, I'll tell you, from my experience working in the court systems, there aren't any liberal judges. There are judges who look...
Culture shock. To educate a child in mind and not morals is to educate a menace to society.
Welcome back to Culture Shock. Barbara Walters, anchoring ABC's Nightline, reporting on the Columbine tragedy, said Eric Harris was taking an antidepressant drug and seeing a psychiatrist. Perhaps there's another explanation for his behavior. Well, what really happened to Eric Harris, the cold, calculating shooter at Columbine? Bill, I know that you were in Littleton, Colorado recently. You saw some behind-the-scenes stuff. Tell us what you discovered.
What I discovered is that they're considering strongly giving more of the same treatment that, in my opinion, led to the problem in the first place.
Dr. Coulson, correct me if I'm wrong, was Littleton, Colorado, Columbine High School in Littleton,
yeah.
Were they kind of a psychologically friendly school system, or were they no psychology in the schools?
No.
I mean, let's find out what he was spoon-fed.
Well, they were famous. The Wall Street Journal back in 1990.
For how many years?
Well,
for how many years?
For 2 decades.
For 2 decades.
Back in
and they had this incident where 2 students went on a rampage.
Well, Jeff, back in 1990, I was asked by ABC 2020 to consult on a segment of the 2020 program that they were doing on Columbine High School. Guess what they called the segment? This is 9 years before the massacre. ABC broadcast a segment under the title "Death in the Classroom." It was as though they knew it was coming.
Why did they use that particular title?
Well, they were concerned
about
about courses in death and dying, and a young woman at Columbine had tried to kill herself, but she didn't pick it up in a psychology course. You'll be glad to hear she picked it up in an English course. But this stuff has so infected the whole school system that teachers now are playing at psychology.
But how are we looking at the school, particularly at psychology, as causing these mental health issues. I think that's a tremendous leap, and I think that's ridiculous.
Come back to the focus. I absolutely agree with you that it is the responsibility of parents to be involved in raising their children, teaching them absolutes, teaching them right and wrong, and helping them to process their feelings, helping them with social interaction, being positive role models. But is it the school's responsibility or the school's place to have these courses, these classes? Is it the school's job to teach my child how to deal with anger and conflict? I don't think so.
No, absolutely, it's the school's job, because we're talking about kids in school who not just learn about academics, but they are also learning how to interact with other people. That's where the majority of the kids pick up their interpersonal skills.
We all know about guns, we all know about Hollywood, we all know about violent video games, but very few people are talking about the role of psychology.
Or the danger, if you take and you spoon-feed psychology to kids, and they feel good and they feel great when they do what they want to, and there's no right or wrong, then you end up with chaos.
But Dwight, what about all of the kids who have made it? All the kids who are psychologically healthy because they have been able to explore themselves and talk about their desires and their goals.
It's not the school's responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the English teacher to be involved in anything except teaching English.
Then why is it the responsibility of parents to make sure their kids do their homework? Because school is an extension in the home.
We're going to leave Dr. Jeff Gardere at that point. Dr. Bill Coulson has been our guest today, and Bill, thank you for being with us on Culture Shock.
You're
welcome.
Thanks, I hope you get along better next time.
Fresh air. We're going to come back with Psych on Psych and straighten out Dr. Gardere in just a moment. You stay with us. Psych on Psych is next. The rating system that's been designed for movies or rating system for television, if anything, it's too soft because it lets junk come through for kids to watch, and what you watch is what you become. The idea of having some sense of a code, of a morality, of a right and wrong, that children should not be exposed to this, teenagers should not be exposed to this, and some of it doesn't even need to be made.
Well, I'll tell you what, the code system does not work. It doesn't work in movies. It doesn't work especially for television. I'll tell you what does work.
Culture Shock.
Welcome back to Culture Shock, and I've been waiting for this moment to begin. Hey, Dwight, you're talking about TMP, too much psychology. Well, I say NEP, not enough psychology.
And I say that you're absolutely wrong. We have seen in 30 years of human history in the United States that if you keep teaching kids about self-esteem without consequences, without a moral sense of absolutes, you create absolute chaos.
And there you go again about not teaching them about morals. You can teach psychology, but you can also teach morals. They don't have to be mutually exclusive,
But it is never,
Dwight.
ever psychology's place to be in the classroom replacing anything. The classroom is about learning and academics, but Jeff, once again, we agree.
To disagree.
I'm Dwight Bain.
And I'm Dr. Jeff Gardere.
Plan on joining us next time.
Right here on Culture Shock.